Go ahead.
This is Frankie Edgar, UFC fighter. Welcome to the Trevor Airdrie Show.
Welcome everybody to episode 20 of the Trevor Airdrie Show. I am your host, Trevor Airdrie. Special shout out goes to Corey Sharon for the theme song Get Back Up. And the sponsor of this special edition show, Street Soldier, sick swag at sick prices. Go to www.strtsoldier.com and get yours today. Alright, this past weekend we had PFC 3 live from London, Ontario, Canada in the Budweiser Gardens. It was a show brought to you by PFC President Jamie Champion and Dr. Faisal Rahman. It was a show that was for charity, the Kidney Foundation, which they raised over, I believe it was around $1 million that they raised from the event, which is absolutely incredible for a disease that, hinders a lot of people. It was a incredible card. It featured 10 fights with a main event of Jesse Ronson versus Dom O'Grady. Jesse Ronson fresh off of 3 straight controversial split decision losses, 2 of which I actually scored him the victor. 1, it was so close that I wouldn't even want to score it. And, he came up against a very tough opponent in Dom O'Grady and just destroyed him. It was the Jesse Ronson show from start to the finish at 45 seconds of round 2. Ronson just proved that he is destined for the UFC. He was just in a wrong place, wrong time situation and got a lot of bad judges. Well, on Saturday night, he did not leave that to the hands of the judges. Let his hands fly and finished the fight in relative ease. In the co-main event of the night, we had a rubber match between Jesse Gross and Justin Gaines. It was the 3rd time these two have met, 1-1 in the past 2, and this fight did not disappoint. It was a 29-28, 28-29, 29-28 winner for the hometown boy, Jesse the Ghost Gross. It was back and forth. I believe Gross won round 1. I believe Gaines won round 2, and then in round 3, I think Ghost did just enough to eke out the win, and, the judges saw it the exact same way I did. This was one of those fights that it had a lot behind it because of an article that was released that this could have been Jesse's last fight, but, I don't see that happening anymore. He looked really great in that cage. He looked really strong, looked, determined, and he had the cardio to get himself through a 15-minute fight. And, winning always makes, those retirement issues go away. And yeah, congrats to Jesse Gross on that win. Before that, we had one of the most anticipated fights going into that night. It was a 125 bout between Randy Turner and Malcolm Gordon. Both these guys are destined for the upper level of MMA in that division, both of which I can see being future flyweight champions and even bantamweight champions should they decide to move up a weight class. Both these guys looked really good going into this fight. Randy Turner was just proved to be just too much for Malcolm Gordon. Randy would cut off the center of the octagon, push Malcolm back to the cage, and Malcolm getting cut early in the fight probably hurt him a little bit more than what a lot of people thought. And Randy Turner catches him with a mean flurry of punches and finishes Malcolm Gordon via knockout at 3:17 of round 2. It was just one of those fights that you have these 2 top prospects in Canada going up against each other. One of them has to win, one of them has to lose. And on Saturday night, it was Randy Turner getting the win out of that one. Before that, we had what a lot of media around the cage was saying was the fight of the night, Kyle Preplik versus Damian Hill. Kyle Preplik is one of those guys that should be on a lot of people's radar going forward. He is great for the sponsors. He's great for any promotion he fights for. He's a very gracious person. And, you know, he's a badass in the cage. He went into that fight and kept everything to game plan. That MTC crew was very, very difficult to compete with on Saturday night. He, you know, got the win via submission over Damian Hill, who's a very tough opponent in round 2. And, you know, Kyle Preplik, mark my words, he will be seen on a TV near you very, very, very soon. All right, and before that, we had Joey Holt defeating Adam Asenza via submission, standing guillotine in round 1. You know, both guys looked good once again, like Alex Caprici, Jamie Champion, Woodrow James, those guys that put together this card. You know, I can't say enough about them. They put together a lot of great fights and, you know, a lot of great matchups. And when Adam Asenza's time to fight was, he went in maybe a little bit too strong against Joey Holt, got caught in a standing guillotine, and Holt had it in deep, and Joey Holt gets the win via standing guillotine. Prior to that, we had a little bit of a scary moment in the Budweiser Gardens when Blake Nash defeated Brian Jordan via TKO injury. Blake Nash looked very good and very strong all the way through this fight. I had him up 2-0 on the cards, and, you know, whether the injury happened or not, I don't believe that would have changed too much of the way the fight was going. I believe it was going the way of Blake Nash's side, but I do wish Brian Jordan a quick and speedy recovery in healing what looked to be a dislocated knee. Prior to that, we had 2 back-to-back technical submissions. The only reason I know that word is one of the refs was sitting beside me at the media table, and he was, you know, telling me a little bit about, you know, the difference between a technical submission and a submission, where 2 guys just refused to tap. And I'll go through both these fights at the same time because they are a very similar type of ending to them. Nealon Hordat defeats David Hale via rear naked choke, technical submission, and Josh Rich defeats James Mancini via technical decision, rear naked choke. The difference, technical choke, is when the guy doesn't tap. When he does tap, it's a submission. When he does tap, it's a technical submission. So both Nealon Hordat and Josh Rich gets the win via technical decision. Prior to that, we had the MMA debut of Chris Lee Byrne versus Rafael Palomikas. Palomikas, I had him up 2-0. Going into the third, you know, I'm a big fan of Chris Lee Byrne, of what he's done on like the jiu-jitsu circuit and whatnot, but I had to be open and honest and say I thought he was down 2-0. You know, it was, the one round was a little bit close. The second one, I did score more for Palomikas based on, you know, the better positioning and whatnot. That being said, the ref was a little bit shaky in that contest with, you know, nobody was pressing the action. Palomikas was on top and wasn't standing up to fight as much as I would like to see. And, you know, Chris Lee Byrne, though, comes out in round 3, sinks in a heel hook, and gets himself his first victory. You know, I was talking to him after the fight, and he looked worse than the fight actually, what I actually saw going on in the fight. But, you know, a win is a win, and he will take that, go to 1-0. And I look forward to seeing him in the cage very soon. And, you know, who knows where the top of that kid's like chain is going to be when he's getting the striking really, really nice. He was throwing some really crisp shots, and, you know, he has the submission background to absolutely take the MMA world by storm. And starting off the night, we had, you know, one of the best fights of the night, I thought, Xavier Nash versus Paul Jalbert. They were very evenly matched up, and with the split decision at the end, that just proves that how close this fight really was. 29-28, 28-29, 29-28 for your winner, Xavier Nash, which started off the night great for the Nash brothers, and then Blake Nash later on in the night gets the big win, and both of them make that Nash family 2-0 for the night. So it was a good night in that family's household. So my awards for the night, I have to say, fight of the night went to Kyle Preplik, Damian Hill, and it was very close with Jesse Gross and Justin Gaines, but I had to give it to Preplik and Damian Hill based on the first round of that fight. It was just very back and forth action. KO of the night, no surprise here, Jesse Ronson, coming out and destroying a tough opponent like Dom O'Grady like that. Had to give it to him. And my submission of the night, Chris Lee Byrne, just because I really love watching somebody sink in a heel hook. It's more uncommon than a rear naked choke or a guillotine choke is. So I had to give it to Chris Lee Byrne as submission of the night for PFC 3. So those were my awards. UFC and WSOF stars were very, there was a few of them in attendance. There was Elias Theodoro and Chad Laprise, both winners of the Tough Nations championships for the UFC. We also had Mitch Gagnon, who has an upcoming fight against Henan Barao in the UFC. Josh Hill, Mark Hominick, Sam Stout, Chris Hordeski, Chris Clements, all these guys, UFC or WSOF stars. And, it's just showing how much those big name guys, even though they go up to the big names, they still come down, they support the local MMA. And they have a lot of fighters that they're very good friends with in this area because they all are from Ontario. But, it was still nice to see all of them in attendance. Also, I'm going to close off this show by thanking Jamie Champion and the King, Dr. Faisal Rahman, once again for treating media like gold, having M&A Sports Media out to PFC 3. We hope to be back to PFC 4. And without anything further, I'd also like to thank my sponsors, Street Soldier, Protein 2.0 Water, and our own company, M&A Sports Media, for where you can see all these videos, all my interviews, all, every episode of the Trevor Airdrie Show. And until next time, dream it, believe it, achieve it. I'm Trevor Airdrie, signing off.